Hi, I'm Ashton, and today I wanted to address something that has been a topic that I've been aware of for 5 years, but when I first became aware of it, it was a Tumblr drama thing, and now I've seen it on Twitter, and I'm sure it's on other social media platforms too, but I don't use Tumblr anymore because that place is a fucking mess. But it's still something I wanted to talk about because I've seen it on other places, and I've seen a lot of arguments for and against this thing, and it's just a big mess, and I kind of wanted to talk about my opinions on it and why I feel like in this situation there is a right and wrong. And the big scary topic I'm talking about, as you can probably tell by the title, is ace and aro exclusion. I'm gonna start with a kind of basic background because I feel like even within the LGBT community, a lot of people don't know what ace and aro mean or that they exist as sexualities. Ace stands for asexual and aro stands for aromantic. As you can probably tell by their prefixes, they're kind of related in the way that homosexuality and homo-romanticism are related. They're both seen as spectrums, so asexual and demisexual are kind of on the same spectrum in the idea that asexual people are not attracted to people in a sexual way or don't experience sexual attraction in the same way that others do. There's a lot of different ways that people can experience asexuality and aromanticism, but as I am not aromantic, I can't really talk about that aspect. I've talked about it a little bit in my trauma video, but I experience sexuality in a more gray way, which is why I'm more comfortable with the term demisexual than allosexual, which is the kind of standard normal, I experience sexual attraction like a normal person. That being said, we all know that's not why I'm queer. I'm queer because I'm a non-binary trans person and I'm gay, but that's a different discussion. I got a lot of labels, man. But anyways, as someone that is a member of the LGBT community for, multiple different identities, I would never exclude someone because I don't think they're queer. But the argument that I've seen a lot is that asexual and or aromantic people are not allowed to identify as LGBT or queer simply because they're asexual or aromantic. I somewhat understand where that argument comes from because I know a lot of people view the LGBT community as people that are either attracted to people of the same gender or of other genders, or people that identify with a different gender than the one they were assigned at birth. I don't see the LGBT community that way. I see it as a community of people that experience attraction and or gender in a way that differs from the cis-normative and heteronormative societal norm. For that, my definition of it does include ace and aro people because the standard heterosexual label is allosexual as well. You don't see asexual representation, you don't see aromantic representation. Those identities aren't considered normal in our heterosexual culture. However, a lot of people that are LGBT in other ways will argue that ace people and aro people aren't oppressed the same way that gay people are. And okay, fair, but trans people aren't oppressed the same way gay people are. Bi people are oppressed in different ways than gay people are. The community is not just gay. It's more like a collection of identities that differ from the heterosexual cisgender norm. Not all of us experience oppression in the same ways. A trans person and a gay person have completely different life experiences, so you can't exclude an ace person on the premise that they experience things different than a gay person would. That's not how it works. Just because you're LGBT doesn't mean that you have the authority to dictate who else is. That's my other main issue with excluding ace and aro people from the community. I don't control other people's identities, and I don't think any of us should be allowed to. If somebody's ace and they're comfortable with the label of queer and they want to be part of the LGBT community and they consider themselves LGBT because they're ace, why would you take that away from them? The LGBT community is supposed to be a place of inclusion and acceptance and understanding, and I just feel like pushing people out because we don't think they're queer enough is just kind of against the values of the community as a whole. I don't have the power to dictate how somebody else is allowed to define their sexuality, and I don't think any of us do. We're allowed to define our own sexuality, but we can't define other people's for them. If an asexual person considers themselves a part of the LGBT community, I am in no place to police or gatekeep them. It's just not fair. A lot of the rhetoric is the same arguments that I've seen in the whole drop the T movement. There's a group of same-gender attracted people that think trans people and non-binary people don't belong in the LGBT movement, which is complete shit because literally a trans woman started Stonewall, but whatever, ignore your history, I guess. But what I'm trying to say is I see a lot of parallel rhetoric within these two exclusionary groups. the whole, like, well, you don't experience oppression the same way as us, or you're not queer in the same way that we are. Like, who cares? Let people identify how they want to identify, because you have no say in how somebody else experiences their life and the oppression that they face and the orientation that they feel best suits them. There's also a whole mess of people excluding people because they're ace or aro. Like, I've seen trans people excluded because they're also asexual, which is like, okay, even if you don't consider asexual people part of the LGBT community, like, trans people are. Like, that's not an argument, and I don't think this should be an argument either. I think we should just let people identify how they want to identify, because there's no harm in accepting people that feel that they are oppressed in some way. Do I think that asexual and aromantic people face the same, like, discrimination things that a lot of gay and trans people do? No. But even if there aren't necessarily legal things preventing them from getting married or whatever, like, we should still recognize that they're put through a lot of the same societal bullshit that we are. You know, a lot of ace people, just like a lot of gay people, are told, like, oh, you just haven't found the right man yet. That both of the groups experience, and I don't see why we need to try to exclude each other from this thing that we share. On the other hand, if you're asexual or aromantic and you don't feel that that makes you part of the LGBT community, that's totally fine as well. I totally get if you want to have your own separate community, but I still don't think that you should be telling other aces and other aros that they don't belong. The LGBT community, in a lot of ways, is a celebration of diversity, whether it's orientation-based or gender-based, and asexuality just so happens to be an orientation that is not heterosexuality. At the end of the day, I don't care who you are or what your argument is. I never think it's anybody's place to tell somebody else who they are or who they aren't. Another thing that annoys me about this is, like, the fucking insistence of some of the exclusionary people. There's literally an entire account on Twitter that's at LGBTAce. It's in Spanish, but it's pretty clear that it says, are aro and ace people LGBT? And they just tweet, like, every few hours, no, every single time. Like, why did you dedicate time to excluding people from a community? Like, why would you waste your time on that? This account has 1,300 tweets, and every single one of them is no. Like, how is that helpful? How is this constructive? You're not providing an argument, you're not providing evidence, you're just excluding people that need a community and want a community for no reason. Like, do you have a reason? No, it just says no over and over. I don't get it. If an asexual and or aromantic person wants to identify as queer, I think that's fine. And if they don't, I also think that's fine. But I don't think that anybody that's not aro or ace should, like, have an opinion on whether or not they're LGBT. There's just nothing helpful about excluding people from the community for no other reason than they're not queer enough. Policing and gatekeeping other people's identities just isn't helpful. Like, it's not productive, you're not helping anyone. Like, why don't we advocate maybe against police brutality, against, like, the continuous murder of trans women of color, maybe, like, talk about disability in the LGBT community. Like, we could be having some useful activism conversations instead of just, like, you know, excluding people. It's just not productive. I feel like it comes down to, I genuinely don't understand why LGBT people would put so much effort into excluding one certain identity because they don't think it's LGBT enough. We could be doing so many other things. What could be productive is talking about how many asexual and aromantic communities have homophobic undertones. What could be productive is talking about how the LGBT community does tend to exclude people that they don't understand. There's so many good conversations that we could be having around this issue, or even separate from it, but no, we decide to, like, black and white exclude people from, just why are people like this? Anyways, that's my little rant. If you don't think they belong, I honestly don't care. Just don't be, like, fucking rude. Just let people exist and let people identify how they want to identify. It's not hurting anybody. Okay, I hope that you have a great day, and that if you are ace or aro, you feel welcome and included, and if you're not ace or aro, you just don't gatekeep people and let people be who they are and who they want to be. That is all. Goodbye, and I will talk to you later, maybe.